Hi, I'm Brian from Transylvania, and I have another Bible reading coming your way. Still, we are going back to Second Corinthians. We're going back to Second Corinthians, reading through that. We've already read through First Corinthians. You can check out those videos on the YouTube channel. I am going to talk today about relationships and reputation. And it's an interesting thing to think about because we have some people, particularly we in America, we get this a lot. We get, don't worry about what anybody thinks about you. Don't worry about that. But we worry about that. We think about that in America. We might say that we don't. We might try to put a different sort of spin on it. Fake it till you make it, I think, is another common phrase that Americans use to try to say that just try to look confident or something like that. Um, till you get the relationships you have there, and it's, think about your brand, think about your, what everybody around you is thinking about you. And I don't think it's, on one hand, I don't think it's good to worry about. So I'll say, yeah, that's kind of right. Don't get upset that people might be thinking something negatively about you. On the other hand, you don't want to be insensitive to thought. Now here in Romania, people are very, very sensitive to what other people might be thinking. Usually, when they're not, they're just like, I don't care, and it gets very, very cold. But before that, if I'm talking to people in Romania, it's not uncommon for me to hear, Brian, be careful. People will look at you. And the American side of me goes, so what? Yeah, people will look at me. It's like, I can't control what people think, so it's out of my hands. I can't do anything about what people are thinking, so why worry about just general judgment? I think that's a healthy approach to it. However, I'm not trying to go out and be offensive. I'm not trying to run out and find new ways to live a life that spits in the eye of everybody I see. That's not what I'm trying to do. It's so it's good to think about how what you do meets people. It's good to think about your audience for the sake of sensitivity. However, you also have to understand as a person who God made you, so you have the opportunity to be confident. Now, different people are going to meet people in different ways. The way that Paul was met by the Corinthians, he was not found as favorable as some other Christians. This is why he sent Titus. Titus was one of his right-hand men. He was one of his go-to guys. We see Paul talking about Timothy, who's like a son to him, and Titus, who's another guy who is apparently very enthusiastic. He has a heart for the Lord. He seems very confident and courageous. Paul sends him out with a great deal of desire to see Christ represented well. And that's interesting to me too, because Paul understands that because of his reputation with the Corinthians, even though he helped start that church, it might not be received well. But he knows that they like Titus. And he could get jealous, and he could try to put himself above Titus, but he doesn't do that. He says, hey, I see you like this guy. I like this guy. Jesus likes this guy. Jesus likes all of us. So, because you're more likely to receive him, we're sending him to you. We know that you really, really want to see Titus, and he really wants to see you. So Paul looks to Titus as a representative and puts himself aside. Something that I hope more Christian leaders will start doing. I hope that they'll start realizing that they have their own limitations, that sometimes they might not be able to communicate to the same people that other people in their congregation might be able to. So that's I think this is one of the ways that we see Paul as a great example of living as the church, because he not only does he not put himself first economically and in a variety of other ways, but he recognizes that God is working in other people. He doesn't see himself as like the number one mascot that should be held above everybody else. He sees himself as part of the church and says, you know what? Titus is going to meet you better than I'm going to meet you at this point. So let's take a look at that. Let's look at this and think about relationships and reputation. This is 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 16, going through chapter 9, verse 5. Okay? I'll read it through and stop along the way. So, starting at verse 16 of chapter 8 in 2 Corinthians. I thank God who put into the heart of Titus the same concern I have for you. For Titus not only welcomed our appeal, but he is coming to you with much enthusiasm and on his own initiative. He wants to be there. He's not really even being sent by Paul. Titus, it looks like Titus is actually saying, hey, let me go here. Yeah, you may not have the greatest reputation with some of these people here, but I know them. Let me go first. Let me talk to them. I'm reading into this right now, but I think it's well within the possibility that this is the kind of conversation Titus and Paul were probably having. Let us return. Verse 18. And we are sending along with him the brother who is praised by all the churches for his service to the gospel. We don't know who that is. We don't know. It could be one of the people who already had a relationship with the Church of Corinth. It could have been Apollos, who we here talked about in 1 Corinthians, but we really don't know who this brother of great reputation is. It could be that it's Apollos. I think it could be Apollos because he was highly esteemed by the Corinthian church. People seem to like Apollos. But I don't know. We don't know. It doesn't say here. It's an anonymous brother who is apparently known in context to the Corinthian church. Verse 19. What is more, he was chosen by the churches to accompany us as we carry the offering, which we administer in order to honor the Lord himself, to show the eagerness to help. So Titus and this brother are trusted with, this anonymous brother, are trusted with carrying out the gifts to be given. This means that they had a great deal of integrity. They could be trusted with money and trusted with the distribution to people who are going to be in need. Let's continue. We want to avoid any criticism on the way we administer this liberal gift. So it's a liberal gift. It's a gift that is being given in good portion to the needy. We are taking pains to do this, to do what is right, not only in the eyes of the Lord, but also in the eyes of men. That's one thing that can often be really, really tricky in any day and age. It's like trying to come forward with that kind of sincerity, trying to meet people with this kind of truth that the Lord has installed in you. It's a tricky thing. But I mean, with that, we see again the subject of reputation popping up. And because of Paul's understanding of being well received and meeting a group of people with a person that has a good reputation, he sends out Titus and this anonymous brother. In addition, we are sending with them our brother who has proved to us in many ways that he is zealous, and now even more so because of his great confidence in you. So this is somebody who has a kind of a missions mindset, saying it's like, you know what, I have a heart for these Corinthians. You told me a lot about them. I want to help out. So we see a lot of missionary type thinking in the heads of these people being sent out for the sake of Jesus, doing what Jesus will, being sent to other churches, having relationships with these churches. So we see this group of people traveling together for safety, I imagine, as one would do in the times of the early church. Safety numbers, that sort of thing. And he seems to be sending these brothers ahead of him. As for Titus, he is my partner, fellow worker among you. So Paul knows him and they know him. As for our brothers, they are representatives of the church and an honor to Christ. People being an honor to Christ. That's really interesting. Because, I mean, I've heard a lot of people use the fact that we sin to basically debase Christians, even though they're saved by grace. Apparently, God's working through these brothers in a wonderful way to the point where they are an honor to Christ. Paul's lifting them up, just like we need to lift each other, especially when we're getting it right. When we're getting it right, we need to lift each other up. It's important for our relationships. It's important for their confidence. It's important for building a solid reputation with each other. That reputation gets built mutually so that they can recommend you to others. You can recommend them. So this is something that's important about relationship and reputation. Reputation gets shared through relationship. Let's continue. Verse 24. Therefore show these men the proof of your love and the reason for our pride in you, so that the church can see it. Chapter 9, verse 1. There is no need for me to write to you about the service of the saints. He's already done that quite a bit, apparently, especially in 1 Corinthians. For I know your eagerness to help, and I have been boasting about you to the Macedonians, telling them that since last year you in Achaia were all ready to give. and your enthusiasm has stirred most of them to action. So Paul talking to the Macedonian church about what the Corinthian church is doing, spreading their good reputation, has encouraged and excited the people in Macedonia. It's like, wow, Corinth is doing that. Can we do that too? And that's a good thing to do. If you hear good things that different churches are doing, different styles, different things, ask questions like, should we take that in? Should we try this? Would this work for us? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But it's worth experimenting, it's worth trying. But I am sending the brothers in order that our boasting about you in this matter should not prove hollow, but that you may be ready, as I said you would be, for any Macedonians come with me and find you. Let me go back to verse 4. For any Macedonians come with me and find you unprepared, we, not to say anything about you, would be ashamed of having been so confident. I don't know how many people have been disappointed by their heroes. I have. A lot of people have. I think this day and age, it's very easy to be disappointed by people who are supposed to be better than they are. And maybe it's because they presented themselves so well at one time, but then they fall so short in another time. Something happens and we think, wow, that person's amazing, and then scandal hits and it's like, oh, ugh. Sometimes this happens when a celebrity finds himself in the middle of a scandal. A celebrity, a religious figure, a political figure, it's like you have these ideals, but wow, really? That's where you're going with that? And it gets disappointing. This isn't something new. I mean, we may see it quicker now because of the internet, because of mass media, because of how quickly we receive media. We may find out about scandal and say, oh, that sort of thing. We may even see the same sorts of scandal time and time again and say, again? And that, I think that's kind of what Paul is saying. It's like, look, the Macedonians are looking to you, Corinthians, and saying, wow, those guys are getting it right, huh? Let's take a look. So Paul might be traveling with some Macedonians, and when they get to Corinth, if there's a lot of craziness and bad behavior going on, they're going to be disappointed. I found this cross-culturally here in Romania when I encourage people to not hold America in such a supernatural esteem. A lot of people do this. My friend William and I were talking, actually, a lot of Brazilians who get a job in America talk about their time in America. It's like, yeah, I made it big time. I'm here. I'm in America. Mm-hmm. Me, America. Yeah. We have to stop doing that. Or we have to at least be careful with it. Because people, as the Romanians say, people will look at you. And that does happen. So reputations of who we are from places, from branding, from established actions, they come with us. And how we carry that reputation and where that reputation moves could affect our testimony as Christians when we relate Christ to other people. And just to repeat that verse again, I'm going to go back to verse 4 of chapter 9. For if any Macedonians come with me and find you unprepared, we, not to say anything about you, would be ashamed of having been so confident. So I thought it necessary to urge you, brothers, to visit in advance and finish the arrangement for the generous gift you had promised. They had promised beforehand to give Paul a substantial gift for his ministry to be distributed among the needy. Then it will be ready as a generous gift, not as one grudgingly given. So even in the giving, there is reputation. Everything we do, there is reputation. Don't panic about that. It's the way it is. Be confident that God is with you as your reputation and relationships are building. Now, if there is some reason why you should receive a scandal, some behavior that you have that is scandalous, then try to get rid of that. Try to put that aside for the sake of the relationships and the reputation, because relationship and reputation are close things. And I hope and pray that as I continue to build relationships, that God will build the reputation, and one that is good and reflects back to Him very well. It's kind of a circle, the way Christians, I think, should regard reputation. And we like flashy things. Celebrity Christians, Christians that tickle our ear and say exactly what we want to hear. Yeah, I get that. That's very, very tempting. But we need to come back to this. And if some things that are tickling our ear give us cause for question, especially when it comes from the Bible, then we should be very cautious. And in communication with what we're hearing, we should be very cautious as well. That's not to say we should be scared. It's to say we should be gentle when approaching situations where we have to communicate things that may seem disturbing to us. So don't worry about reputation. Be concerned about relationships, treasure relationships, and be confident in God's reputation, in Christ's reputation beyond us. Paul often says it's Christ who he boasts in. And I think part of the fruit of that is an authentic reputation. It's not to say that enemies won't try to throw mud on that. That's the way of this world. But it could be better to step back, let the mud fly, and be honest with ourselves and say, you know what? God sees that. God sees my heart. God sees their heart. God knows what I need to change. God knows what they need to change. Keep our head up. Eyes focused on Christ. And love focused in our relationships. Thanks for this chance to read again. You can check out my links below if you want to get in touch with me. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm Brian from Transylvania. La Revedere. Bye-bye.